Okay, so last time where we left off, we covered some really good deals on Facebook Marketplace when it comes to used SUVs that are below 300,000 pesos in price. And before that, we also covered used cars in Facebook Marketplace within the price range of 100,000 pesos to 150,000 pesos. Along with that, we also already covered RAV4s and Honda CRVs in Facebook Marketplace. So this time we will instead dedicate our time to covering some good used Ford SUVs that are on Facebook Marketplace. So I'm not sure if I give off the air that I am some sort of Ford hater based on the articles I made, the stories I make on Medium. I write articles about cars on Medium. I do this for a living, not exactly on Medium, but I write about cars almost on a daily basis because of my job as an SEO copywriter, and we cover the automotive industry extensively. That's why I couldn't avoid reading about the various car brands, Ford included, so it was very hard for me to avoid reading information about the recalls, the reliability issues, especially with the modern Ford SUVs, pickup trucks, and other vehicles. Well, that's mainly because Ford, before at the turn of the new century, they were known as a car maker that gave you a lot of super reliable pickup trucks and vehicles. And they had a good sedan lineup back in the 1990s, even the 1980s. So in the US, they had the Ford Crown Victoria, they had the Ford Taurus, and eventually they had the smaller ones like the Ford Fiesta. So all of those cars have a very good reputation in terms of reliability. It's only as of late that they've run into issues with the durability and the maintenance issues of their cars, even their SUVs like the Ford Everest as of late. However, the reason I bring up why I'm on this page of the Ford Ranger is that I wanted to focus on the Ford Everest in our search because it's one of the most popular SUVs that is not sold in the Western or in the North American market. So the Ford Everest has been sold in Australia and a lot of most, if not all, Asian countries, especially in the Philippines, where it is massively popular as an SUV. So what's great about the Ford Everest is that its origins can be tied back to the Ford Ranger. And the Ford Ranger is a pickup truck that is one of the greatest pickup trucks, if not one of the most celebrated vehicles of all time, not just among pickup trucks. And it's a pickup truck that Ford first came out with in 1983 when it was first sold as a compact pickup truck. Now, you can find a lot of resources about the history of the Ford Ranger, but this was Ford's way of entering into that compact pickup truck segment. It's kind of hard to say that the Ford Ranger that we see nowadays is compact, but right now, since 2019, the Ford Ranger has been in the mid-size category. Although when you look at a Ford Ranger nowadays, it looks so massive that you wonder whether it's mid-sized or not. So back in the 1980s, Ford was a bit new to the compact pickup truck market. It was a market that other competitors had already broken in, like for example Toyota and even General Motors. So when they came out with the Ford Ranger, it would become one of their best-selling pickup trucks of all time. It was massively popular, and they eventually entered into a partnership with Mazda to develop the Ford Ranger pickup truck, and it only got better from there. And you even see the other pickup trucks that are produced by Mazda, although they don't sell that anymore in the US, but they continue to sell the pickup trucks from that B series, the B2000, B2200. So it's those pickup trucks that you see of Mazda in the modern era, that also has its origins with their partnership with Ford that started back in the 1980s. So, with the Ford Ranger compact pickup truck, that is how the Ford Everest came to be. And in the early 2000s, Ford used the platform they've been making the old Ford Ranger in. This was before the Ford Ranger entered into a hiatus, and that's how they developed their SUV for the Southeast Asian market, which is the Ford Everest. And just looking at all the listings of these Ford Everests here, you can't help but really be enticed by just the looks alone, right? So, looking at Facebook Marketplace, I'm just gonna go and check everything here for Ford SUV. So this one is not yet, I believe it's not yet based on the Ford Ranger that you see, because the Ford Ranger, that is the mid-size pickup truck, the one that they used for making the Ford Ranger Raptor, that one they started back in 2019. And we're gonna look at some Ford Everest that were developed, produced around the 2010s. And this one, these Ford Everests have a really good reputation when it comes to reliability, especially when compared to the new Ford Everest, which have their own whole host of issues. So this one is just for 320,000 pesos, and it's a 2012 model, and it's been driven for 125,000 kilometers. So in miles, that's only just below 80,000 miles. So that's a pretty good mileage for this Ford Everest. And it has a 1-liter engine. It's hard to think about the Ford Everest having a 1-liter engine nowadays, because it's a mid-size SUV and that's a bit small. No pictures of the interior. So as an automatic transmission, this Ford Everest can be a good option in the city. So I've been seeing a lot of Ford Territory models being sold. Here, I think it's become very popular in the Philippines as a compact crossover SUV, although I've heard a lot of horror stories from other owners. And the notorious, or the common complaint from owners with the Ford Territory is the gas consumption. Just go look over at Reddit. Even if we do a quick check on Fuely, let's go here. In terms of the Ford Territory's gas mileage, we get a good idea of how much it consumes. So based on the older models, for a compact SUV, this is pretty bad gas mileage. And based on 444 fuel, 2013 Ford Territory. This one though is not so sure about these numbers for the Ford Territory. So not a lot of reliable numbers that we can find for the Ford Territory in Fuely, but just based on the complaints from owners, if you expect this to have gas mileage between 8 to 10 kilometers per liter, especially if you live in a city, I think those figures are going to be very hard to achieve. Even if it's like a 2018, 2020's Ford Territory model. So we have here a Ford Expedition. So essentially, this is currently Ford's flagship SUV. It's their biggest model. It kind of looks like a Chevrolet Suburban in terms of length. But Ford actually had an even bigger SUV than this, the Ford Excursion, but that model would very likely not pass modern emission standards, and the gas mileage would just really drain your wallet if you were gonna fuel that up regularly. So, looking at the Ford Expedition, if you kind of remove this, the cover, the third row behind the second row, so you get a good idea that it's like a pickup truck, right? So the Ford Expedition is actually made in the same platform as the full-size Ford F-150. So you can imagine it's a very massive SUV. So it might not be the best SUV to drive on a daily basis, especially in the Philippines, especially if you go to the city and cities like Cebu, Manila, even Davao, and have a Ford Expedition. It might not be the best daily driver because you're gonna get killed on gas mileage. But if you have like a second car, a smaller car, it would actually make sense to have a very massive Ford Expedition just having around. If you have the luxury of having two cars, having a Ford Expedition would probably be not so bad. And I think the price of 460K is not a very steep price for a used Ford Expedition, especially considering that it's made in the same platform as the Ford F-150, which is the best-selling vehicle in the United States for a very long time. As their rankings are usually the Chevrolet Silverado, Ram 1500, and the Ford F-150 is right on top there.